I don't care how much you give or how little you give. If you call on him, he's going to help you. He also goes on, he says, help us, O Lord our God, for we rest on thee. That is, if you look at the book of Hebrews, it says the Israelites lost their rest because they took their eyes off of God. During Asa's reign, he says, God, give us rest. If one of us gets cancer, and I'm not going to say God forbid, because God can use it to his glory and improve our life, I would expect Betty Johnson to be the person that would go and say, have faith. God will use this one way or another. If you survive it, you need to serve him. If you die, you gain. And that's the attitude we need to take as we have those victories. And that's the rest that we have. God will use this. He says, and in thy name we go against this multitude. O Lord, thou art our God. You know, I believe that pronoun our. I don't believe he could have said our God if he wouldn't have had the 10 years to prepare the people for the war. Because remember the verse I gave you? He said, I command you, Judah, that you have a relationship with God and that you learn his word. Before God allowed war to come upon them, the people were having a relationship with God. The people were becoming entrenched in the word. And when war came, they were willing to follow their leader, their physical leader and their spiritual leader in Asa, because Asa said, here we go, boys. We've prepared for it. Let's go to battle. As God's people, I believe God is not going to let any bigger of an army come against us than we can handle through his power. That's right. Clapping sometimes for God's power is right. And he goes on. He says, O Lord, thou art our God. Let not man prevail against, notice the word, let not man prevail against, what's that say right there? Thee. He doesn't say, oh God, don't let this Ethiopian prevail against me and my kingdom. He says, oh Lord, don't let him prevail against you. Right. Too many times it's been my church. This is my church, and we do, and we do, and we do. You are my church. I'm part of this church. I have personal possession of this church with you. That's a covenant relationship, isn't it? Yes. Covenant means we're hanging on together. It's us. But we need to remember when we go to battle that when God has the world battling against him, he takes it as a personal affront. He says, you're going to mess with me, boys, you're going to play with the big boy. And you're going to find out about God's glory. So the Lord smote the Ethiopians before Asa and before Judah, and the Ethiopians fled. Who did the smoting? God did. But I really believe that Asa could have learned a lesson, because if Asa went and said, oh, it's all about me, and put it that way, I think God's answer may have been different. You ever find sometimes God in our life, when we get too prideful, allows us to be smote by the world so that we come down a notch? But when we're in a place where we're recognizing and we say, oh God, help me, then we see the best victories we've ever seen in our life, because we recognize him instead of ourselves. Abundant victory is found. 2 Chronicles 14, 13 through 15. And Asa and the people that were with him pursued them unto Gerar, and the Ethiopians were overthrown, that they could not recover themselves. Means utterly defeated. That they could not recover themselves, for they were destroyed before the Lord and before his host, and they carried away very much spoil. Now I want you to picture how God's, if you will, sense of humor works. He gives Asa all these years and says, it's your time, you choose how to use it. Asa uses it wisely, so the people are spiritually prepared, physically prepared. They've used the blessings of God to prepare things. Then this war comes about, and they look, and instead of looking to themselves, they look to God, they give him the glory. And God doesn't just do all the work. God doesn't just do it. It says that Asa and the men that were with him got to participate in the victory. We're not just going to stand by and watch God do everything and go, I guess all that preparation we don't even get to play. No, we get to play. We get to be part of the victories. We're not just bystanders, as Dad brought out in one of his classes. We are part of that military army that gets to see the victory in God. And by the way, Asa spent 10 years using all the blessings of God to prepare. When he stood firm in his faith, guess what God did at the end? He went to that 1,000,000-man army and he spoiled them. The word spoil means that he went out and he took all their goods and all their wealth and all their riches and he added it to his own. When life comes at you and the world comes at you and all these seemingly possibly defeated things come at you, if you'll stand for the Lord and say, Lord, for your name's sake, I pray that you give victory. You watch what God does. Not only can God give you victory, he'll give you more than you had in the beginning. Didn't he do it with Job? We always talk about how much Job lost, but you know in the book of Job it says that when Job was finished and done, he had twice as much as he had in the beginning. How many times in our life, if we'll just serve the Lord, could we have more than we have if we stop living in defeat? Notice this. And they smote all the cities round about Gerar, for the fear of the Lord came upon them, and they spoiled all the cities, for there was exceeding much spoil in them. A second mention of spoil. Not only did they spoil the Ethiopians, they destroyed all the cities there, and they got all the wealth that was in there. We look and we say it's $1 million for property, and I am the most guilty of all of you. I am probably the guilty one for going around and saying it's $1 million. We need to find out other alternatives than that. We need to be wise stewards, but I'll tell you what, we need to not be so wise in stewardship that we forget that God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Amen. And I've been the most guilty of you all, and I apologize for that. The more I have studied out Asa, this isn't from the conference, this is because in studying out Asa's life, I thought, where is my leadership at? Why haven't I been leading the people in victory? Why am I limiting God's abilities and resources? When Asa just stepped out, Asa didn't ask for wealth. Asa didn't ask for victory. Asa didn't ask for anything. He said, Lord, I want you to have the victory. And when he asked that God have the victory for God's name's sake, God gave the victory, and then God said, here you go, son. Here you go, son. Not only did he get the spoils from the Ethiopian army, he got the spoils from the cities that were around. How many times, now I want you to picture this, the devil will come at us with everything he's got with his armies. When we preach the truth of Jesus Christ and we preach the redeeming power and that he can be bought from sin, how many times can his army be spoiled because they are converted? Their old life is dead. It is crucified in Christ. It is taken over. It is spoiled. And those individuals come in here and instead of their money and instead of their resources, instead of their minds being given to the devil's workshop and his glory, they come in here and they begin giving everything to God in offerings and tithes and in time and in talents. That's the God we serve. Spoiling is still part of God's will. It's just a different army this time. And he won. They smote also, notice this, the tents of cattle and carried away sheep and camels in abundance and returned to Jerusalem. I don't believe we're limited here. You know why? Asa went beyond the homeland. We need to for churches that are preaching the truth. And in today's world, people are getting mellow and watered down truth. Today, what we need to do, I'm telling you, I've already started praying for the men that God will raise up for Fairfield. Praying for the men that God will raise up for, guess what, Sonoma. But I believe that if we start praying now, God will allow us to see those spoils by us sending them out and seeing them planted. And we will be able to return home after working with them and say, look at what God has done. Look at the victories God had. When we came here, everybody said it's so expensive, but look what God's done. Not only did he give us the blessings here, he gave us the blessings in cities around us. Because we did everything for his name's sake. I'm telling you, this series has got a hold of me. I'd never studied out Asa real in depth. Read through him and said, oh, that was a nice guy. Good guy. He served the Lord. But when you look at Asa's character and how he trained his people, he didn't train his people to be defeated. He trained them to live in the victory that's found in God. Asa's wisdom. Asa had peace with God because he believed more in God than he believed in his family, friends, advisors, idols, followers, wealth, prestige, military outposts, weapons, mighty men of valor, or seemingly dominant opponents. If you read Asa, these are all the things that he just said, God, you're able to overcome all this. Asa was not crazy. He was wise. He believed in God's power as we should.